Hello and welcome to Formula One News. So, qualifying 2016, the first one is complete in Australia around Albert Park. And what have we learned? Well, we've learned that the new qualifying format is a little bit unusual and the teams have a little bit to learn. They haven't quite got their hands on it or their head wrapped around it just yet. Q1 was interesting, and I think there was a moment right at the start that made me optimistic. It was that Hamilton and Rosberg were fighting literally from the minute they were in the pit lane, before it had even opened. They were jockeying for position on the first lap. So I think that points to maybe we're having a bit of competition between these two. Rosberg was looking for his 7th pole position on the bounce, and Hamilton was looking to deny him of that. Rosberg, maybe the pressure showed a little bit. His first full flying lap in Q1, he fluffed it into the first corner, and that put him down towards the back, and he had to do another lap later on to pick it back up again. But that was really not the main story in Q1. The main story in Q1 was that the teams and the commentators, and dare I say it, the spectators as well, were all struggling to get their head around this new format. In case you weren't watching, and in case you don't know what it is, previously, there was these 3 sessions, Q1, Q2 and Q3, and the fastest drivers from each would move on to the next one to determine the grid. Now you have that, but you also have these 90-second increments where the slowest driver at the end of each 90-second block gets eliminated. And this caused massive confusion. After Wehrlein and Haritano went out just not being fast enough, a whole bunch of drivers got caught out by this. The team seemed to send them out, and then they weren't out long enough to complete the lap, and there was the cutoff time, and they had to come back into the pits. Guys caught out by this were Gutierrez, Grosjean, Kvyat, and Nasser. All of these guys seem to be caught out by the new things, which is pretty inexplicable when you think that teams have massive supercomputers figuring out their strategy, and they have all sorts of engineers and everybody figuring out what they should do, and they couldn't figure it out. So I don't know what hope there is for the commentators and spectators. Ericsson also went out in Q1 in P16. I think worth noting in Q1 is that Gutierrez and Grosjean weren't the back of the grid. And considering this is the Haas team, this is their first full season, or their first season at all, that's pretty good. You know, they qualified ahead of Manor, which, okay, it's not an amazing achievement, but you'd expect them to be at the back of the grid, considering Manor have a few more years' experience on them. So, you know, well done Gutierrez and Grosjean. In Q2, we were treated to see what the Mercedes could really achieve. They clearly turned their engines up to the maximum, and they were pushing hard, and they were pretty much a second ahead of everybody else. So I think you could kind of feel a bit of a collective groan among the F1 community that perhaps we're not going to have the competitive season we were hoping for, but at least the Mercs are going to be interesting to watch if they can keep competing with each other. At the tail end of Q2, there was Magnussen and Palmer. They were out for Renault, and can I just say, I think that Renault car looks fantastic. That yellow and black is really racy. Really like the way it looks. Next were Button and Alonso in 13th and 12th. And worth commenting here that while 12th and 13th is not the position that McLaren are racing for, they're a full works team with a massive budget. They're here to win championships. It is such a huge improvement from 12 months ago that I think we really need to call it out. It's a great achievement. The engine is working. Honda have clearly made changes. The car seems to be working well. The drivers are positive. So great steps forward for McLaren, but lots more to go. In 11th was Bottas, 10th was Hulkenberg, and 9th was Perez. Force India has also looked great in this. They were near the top of the timesheets in Q1, so I think maybe there's a lot to come from Force India this season. Q3, and we had the top 8 remaining going out again, and there was a huge flurry of activity right at the start of Q3. All those drivers going out, setting the fastest laps they could, really trying hard. Again, the pressure showing on Rosberg here. He fluffed his first lap, but other than that, the first couple of minutes of this session were great, lots of action on track. After the initial flurry of activity, I think it's sort of where the format fell down, because the teams didn't have enough time to get in, change their tyres, refuel, get out, and have enough time left to complete a lap. So we were left in this kind of weird limbo period where we were just sitting around for about 5 minutes, just waiting for these 90-second increments to tick down and for drivers to get eliminated. And after that period, no other drivers went out, bar Hamilton and Rosberg right at the end to set new laps. Rosberg improved to second, and Hamilton retained pole. So, you know, the final top 8 for that qualifying session was Hamilton, Rosberg, Vettel, Raikkonen, Verstappen, Massa, Sainz, and Ricciardo. And this leads me to wonder, why did we do this new format? Because when crazy Bernie Ecclestone said 3 weeks ago that we were doing this in Australia, it was because we were going to change the grid, we were going to liven it up, bring people from the back to the front and vice versa, and make the race a bit more interesting. And that hasn't happened, because that top 8 is pretty much what you'd expect and kind of what we were used to seeing from last season. So maybe this new format hasn't worked perfectly and there's tweaks we need before the start of the new race. But before we get to the next race, we still have a whole race to get through, and that's tomorrow morning. Lights go out in Australia and the season gets underway for good. I know I'll be watching, I hope you will too. But subscribe to this channel for more Formula One news.